Grandma Noah whispered, tugging at my sleeve. Dad hid something in Grandpa's workshop. His face was pale, his eyes fixed on the hallway where David was laughing with Melissa. Noah told me he had seen his father pry up a board beneath Richard's workbench and hide a red metal box. When David caught him watching, he warned him never to tell anyone. Before dawn, I carried Richard's old flashlight across the frozen yard. Inside the workshop, fresh sawdust covered the floor and the workbench had been moved. I knelt beside a board marked with new scratches. Then headlights swept across the window. Someone was coming up my driveway. Before I tell you who it was and what I found beneath that floor, I need to ask you something. What would you do if your own grandchild warned you about your son? Would you trust the child, or would you believe the man you raised? Share your honest thoughts in the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about family truth and finding courage later in life speak to you, please like this video and subscribe. It helps more than you know. The headlights slid across the workshop wall bright enough to turn every hanging tool into a long, crooked shadow. I froze beside the loosened floorboard. For one awful second, I was certain David had returned. I pictured him opening the door, seeing me on my knees, and asking why I was searching through Richard's things before sunrise. I had no answer ready. I had never needed to prepare lies for my own son before. The vehicle slowed near the end of the driveway, then it rolled forward again. Through the dusty window, I saw the faded blue roof of the newspaper delivery car. The driver had taken the wrong turn, corrected himself, and disappeared back toward the road. I let out the breath I had been holding, but the relief did not last. What frightened me was not the car. It was the fact that the moment I saw those headlights, I had thought of David, my own child. The little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms had become the man I feared finding me alone in his father's workshop. That realization hurt more than I was ready to admit. I lowered Richard's flashlight toward the floor and forced my hands to stop shaking. The board came up with a soft crack. Beneath it was a narrow compartment between two support beams. It was deep enough to hold a small metal box, but it was empty. I ran my fingers along the wood. A reddish stain marked one corner. Rust. Near a bent nail, a thin strip of dark fabric had snagged against the grain. I pulled it free and held it beneath the flashlight. It looked like part of a work glove. Noah had told the truth. Something had been hidden there, and someone had already come back for it. As I stared into that empty space, my mind went back 6 months to the morning Richard died. He had been in the backyard repairing a small oak chair for Noah. It was an old chair from our kitchen, set when Richard had promised to shorten, so Noah could use it at the workbench. I had been inside making coffee when I heard the tool tray hit the patio stones. By the time I reached him, Richard was lying on his side beside the chair. His eyes were open, but he could not speak. I called 911. I pressed both hands against his chest, exactly as the dispatcher instructed. I begged him to stay. "Richard, please. Don't leave me here." The ambulance arrived quickly, but not quickly enough. He died before noon at Maple Creek Regional Hospital. We had been married 47 years. After the funeral, the house changed. It did not become quiet all at once. People came with casseroles, flowers, sympathy cards, and soft voices. Neighbors sat at my kitchen table and told stories about Richard. Men from his old carpentry crew stood in the driveway crying into their hands. Then, one by one, they returned to their lives. The silence arrived later. It lived in the empty side of my bed, in the second coffee mug I stopped taking from the cabinet, and in the workshop door I could not bring myself to open. David came often during those first weeks. He brought groceries without asking. He mowed the lawn. He changed the furnace filter and fixed the loose handrail near the basement stairs. "Let me handle things for a while, Mom," he said. "You've been through enough." At first, I was grateful. He was my only child. Richard and I had raised him to help family when family needed him. When David sat at the kitchen table sorting my mail, I thought he was being responsible. When he offered to pay bills online, I thought he was saving me trouble. When he asked about my bank accounts, I assumed he wanted to make sure I was protected. Grief makes simple tasks feel heavy. Some mornings, even opening an envelope seemed harder than it should have been. So, I let him help. That was the word I used then. Help. One afternoon, David held up a letter from First County Bank. "You don't need to worry about this," he said. "What is it? Just an account notice?" He folded it and placed it beneath a stack of advertisements. I reached for it, but he moved the papers closer to himself. "I'll take care of it. I can read my own mail, David." He smiled as if I had made a joke. "I know you can. I'm just trying to make things easier." The next week, he suggested adding his name to my checking account. "Only for emergencies," he said. "If you get sick, I need to be able to pay the mortgage and utilities. The house is paid off." His face changed for less than a second. Then the smile returned. "I know. I meant the taxes, insurance, things like that." Richard had always insisted that I maintain accounts in my own name. He said every adult should understand where the money was and who had access to it. "I appreciate the offer," I told David, "but I'm not ready to change anything." He leaned back in his chair. "Mom, this isn't about readiness. It's about being practical." I said no. He looked wounded. That was one of David's gifts. He could make a boundary sound like a betrayal. A few days later, he began talking about the house. He pointed out the stairs. He mentioned the icy driveway. He said the backyard was too much work, and the roof would need repairs eventually. "You shouldn't be here alone." He pointed out the stairs. He mentioned the icy driveway. He said the backyard was too much work, and the roof would need repairs eventually. "You shouldn't be here alone," he told me. "I've lived here for 32 years. That doesn't mean it's still safe. I'm 68, David. I'm not helpless." "I didn't say you were helpless." But the way he spoke made me feel as though I needed permission to prove otherwise. Then he took me to Cedar Glen, a polished senior community 20 minutes away. The lobby had stone fireplaces, bright flowers, and a dining room with white tablecloths. A cheerful woman showed us a one-bedroom apartment overlooking a pond. David talked more than I did. He asked about meal plans, medical transportation security, and move-in dates. I stood near the window and imagined waking in that room without Richard's books, without our kitchen, without the workshop beyond the garden. "It's lovely," I said when we returned to the car. "But I'm not moving." David gripped the steering wheel. "You didn't even think about it." "I did think about it. For 10 minutes. I don't want to sell the house." His jaw tightened. "Dad would not want you clinging to a property you can't manage." That sentence struck me. Richard had never called our home a property. It was our home, our garden, our memories, and the place where we planned to grow old together. "Your father knew what I wanted," I said. David turned toward me. "And he knew you could be stubborn." For the rest of the drive, neither of us spoke. Standing in the workshop 6 months later, I understood that the pressure had not begun with the senior community. It had begun with the mail, with the bills, with every small decision David tried to take out of my hands. I lowered the floorboard back into place and brushed the sawdust around it. Then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The dust beneath the workbench was disturbed in 2 directions. One set of marks led from the floor compartment toward the back door. The other led toward Richard's old blue vise. I lifted the flashlight. The vise sat at the far end of the bench, exactly where Richard had bolted it years ago. But one of the screws on its base was clean. Too clean. Someone had touched it recently. I stepped closer. Then I heard the faint scrape of a shoe outside the workshop door. The scrape outside the workshop door came again. I switched off Richard's flashlight. The room fell dark. For several seconds, I heard nothing except the wind moving through the bare branches behind the workshop. Then something brushed against the lower part of the door. I gripped the flashlight like a weapon. "Who's there?" I called. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. A gray raccoon darted past the window and disappeared beneath the woodpile. I nearly laughed from relief, but the sound caught in my throat. I had lived in that house for 32 years. I had walked across that yard in darkness hundreds of times. I had never been afraid of the workshop before. Now, every noise felt like a warning. I turned the flashlight back on and faced the old blue vise. Richard had bolted it to the far corner of his workbench when David was still in high school. It was heavy chipped and stained with years of oil. Richard could have replaced it many times, but he refused. "A good tool doesn't become useless because it looks old," he once told Noah. "You take care of it, and it keeps taking care of you." I touched the handle. The metal was cold enough to sting my fingers. The screw on the left side of the base was clean. The others were dark with age. Someone had recently removed it or tried to. I searched the drawers for the correct wrench. Everything inside was arranged exactly as Richard had left it. Small tools rested in painted outlines. Drill bits were sorted by size. Pencils stood upright in a coffee can Noah had decorated with blue stars. Seeing those things made my chest ache. Richard had always been organized, but he also enjoyed hiding little surprises. On our 20th anniversary, he had left a note inside the sugar jar telling me to check the mailbox. Inside the mailbox was another note sending me to the linen closet. That trail ended in the workshop where he had built me a cedar chest. "You walked past it 3 times?" he had teased. "You made it look like a pile of scrap. That was the point." I remembered his smile. Then another memory surfaced. 3 months before he died, I had entered the workshop while he was writing beneath the edge of the bench. He had covered the mark with his hand when he saw me. "What are you hiding?" I asked. "Your birthday present. My birthday is 8 months away. I like to plan." At the time, I believed him. Now, I lowered myself carefully and shone the flashlight under the bench. The underside was covered with pencil measurements, dates, and old cutting notes. Most meant nothing to me. Then I saw a fresh line near the back corner. "S. Trust the blue vise." I read it twice. Richard rarely called me Stephanie when we were alone. To him, I was Steph's sweetheart, or simply S when he left notes. The message had been written for me. Not for David, not for Diane. For me. My first feeling was relief. Richard had expected me to find something. My second was anger. He had known there was danger. He had known enough to leave clues, yet he had gone to his grave without telling me. I pushed the anger aside and fitted the wrench over the clean screw. It turned easily. Too easily. Someone had loosened it before me. I removed the second screw, then lifted the heavy metal base. At first, I saw only darkness. I reached inside and touched plastic. I pulled out a small, clear bag. Inside were 2 objects, a silver key and a black memory card. For a moment, I simply stared. Richard had owned several memory cards for his old wildlife camera, but this one had been wrapped carefully in a moisture-proof sleeve. A piece of masking tape was attached to the bag. One word was written on it. Stephanie. My knees weakened. I sat on Richard's stool holding the bag against my chest. "What did you know?" I whispered. The workshop gave me no answer. I slipped the key and memory card into the inside pocket of my coat. Then I replaced the base of the vise, tightened the screws, and wiped away my fingerprints with the edge of my sleeve. I had just returned the wrench to its drawer when I heard the back door of the house open. This time, it was not an animal. Footsteps crossed the frozen yard. Mom, David. I looked at the clock above Richard's drill press. It was barely 7 in the morning. I moved away from the workbench as the workshop door opened. David stood there in a dark jacket, breathing hard. His eyes moved from me to the floor, then to the vise. "What are you doing out here?" I forced myself to smile. "You frightened me. I called twice. My phone is in the kitchen." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The small room suddenly felt smaller. "I came to get Dad's socket set," he said. "I need it for the fence. At 7 in the morning, I have a busy day." David walked toward the workbench. He did not look at the drawers first. He looked at the floorboard beneath the table. That was when I knew his visit had nothing to do with the fence. He noticed the flashlight in my hand. "You've been searching for something, no?" I saw the workshop door wasn't fully closed. His gaze dropped to my coat. A few grains of sawdust clung to the sleeve. David reached out and brushed them away. The gesture was gentle. His eyes were not. "Did you move Dad's bench?" "No." He studied my face. I could hear Richard's voice in my mind. "Never rush when you're measuring. A mistake made in fear is still a mistake." So I did not look away. I leaned against it because I felt a little dizzy, I said. David's expression changed immediately. Dizzy only for a second. "That's exactly what I've been worried about." "I'm fine. You're out here alone before sunrise, moving around heavy equipment, and now you're telling me you were dizzy." I said I leaned against the bench. "You shouldn't be doing this." The concern in his voice was polished, almost convincing. But instead of helping me toward the door, David walked to the blue vise. He placed one hand on its base. My heart began to pound. "Dad never let anyone touch this thing," he said. "That sounds like him." David tested the handle, then glanced at the screws. I wondered whether he could see that I had removed them. His fingers paused on the clean one. Then he looked at me. "Did you take this apart?" "No." It was the first direct lie I had ever told my son. The words came out calmly. David held my gaze for several seconds. Then he smiled. "Of course not." He opened 2 drawers, moved a few tools, and found the socket set hanging in plain sight. Before leaving, he turned back. "I'm coming Saturday to clean this place out." My grip tightened around the flashlight. "Richard's things are not garbage. I didn't say they were. But you can't keep everything frozen in time. I haven't decided what to do with the workshop. You don't need to decide alone. I do when it belongs to me." The smile disappeared, only for a moment. Then David kissed my cheek. "Get some rest, Mom. You're not thinking clearly when you're tired." I watched him walk toward his truck. He carried the socket set in one hand, but he looked back at the workshop twice. The moment his vehicle disappeared, I ran into the house and locked the door. I placed the silver key on the kitchen table. Then I pulled out the memory card. Richard's old laptop was still in the upstairs closet. I had not opened it since the week he died. As I climbed the stairs, my phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring. Then a message arrived. "I know you were looking for something." I stared at David's message. "I know you were looking for something." My thumb hovered over the screen. For years, I had answered my son immediately. Even when he called during dinner or woke me early, I responded. Mothers develop habits that survive long after their children stop needing them. That morning, I turned the phone face down. I carried Richard's laptop into the bedroom and locked the door. The computer was old. It took nearly 3 minutes to start. While I waited, I listened for a car in the driveway. Nothing. I inserted the memory card. Several folders appeared on the screen. Most had ordinary names, workshop plans, tax records, family photographs. Others were labeled with dates I did not recognize. I clicked one. A password box appeared. I tried Richard's birthday. Incorrect. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect. Then I noticed one video file outside the locked folders. For Stephanie. My hands went cold. I clicked it. The screen stayed black for 2 seconds. Then Richard appeared, sitting at his workbench. Seeing him alive stole the breath from my lungs. He wore his brown flannel shirt. His silver hair needed trimming. Behind him, the blue vise sat in the corner. The date in the lower corner showed the video had been recorded 3 weeks before his death. Richard looked directly into the camera. "Steph," he said, "if you're watching this, then I wasn't able to explain everything myself." I covered my mouth. His voice filled the bedroom. Not a memory. Not a dream. His voice. Richard glanced toward the workshop door, then continued. "I need you to listen carefully. Do not confront David. Not yet." My heart began pounding. Richard had spoken our son's name. "I know that will be difficult," he said. "You'll want answers. You'll want to believe there is an explanation." I wanted that too. He paused and rubbed both hands across his face. I had never seen him look so tired. David has gone farther than I thought he would. "If you found this card, it may mean he has already started pressuring you." I leaned closer to the screen. "Do not sign anything he brings you. It does not matter how harmless he says it is. Do not give him access to your bank accounts, and do not attend any medical appointment, memory evaluation, or legal meeting alone." A chill moved through me. Richard had known. Months before David mentioned Cedar Glen, before he started talking about my forgetfulness, Richard had known something was coming. On the screen, he reached into his pocket and held up a small silver key. "The key I left with this card opened something at First County Bank. Take it there. Ask for Diane Reynolds. Do not call David first." Richard lowered the key. "I should have told you sooner. I kept thinking I could fix it without hurting you." My eyes filled with tears. "Fix what?" I whispered. Richard looked down at the workbench. "I made the mistake of thinking silence could protect this family. It cannot." A sound came from somewhere behind the camera. The workshop door creaked. Richard's head lifted sharply. "Who's there?" The video shook as he reached toward the laptop. For one brief second, I saw a shadow move across the wall. Then the recording ended. I sat completely still. The room seemed too quiet after hearing him speak. I replayed the final seconds. The shadow was tall, adult. Beyond that, I could tell nothing. Had it been David? Had Richard stopped recording because our son entered the workshop? I tried the other files again, but every folder remained locked. Anger rose beneath my grief. Richard had known something dangerous was happening. He had collected evidence, hidden a key, recorded a warning, and never told me. 47 years of marriage, and he had decided I could not handle the truth. I stood so quickly the chair struck the wall. "How could you leave me with this?" I said to the empty room. The words sounded cruel the moment I heard them. Richard had not planned to die that morning. He had probably believed he still had time. But another thought followed. Perhaps he had kept silent because that was what he always did when he was afraid. Richard solved problems with his hands. A cracked chair, a leaking window, a broken hinge, he repaired them quietly. Maybe he had tried to repair David the same way. My phone rang again. This time, I answered. "Hello," finally, David said. "Why were you ignoring me?" I was upstairs. "Looking for what?" The question came too quickly. I forced my breathing to slow. "What are you talking about?" "My message." Are you talking about my message? I assumed you meant the socket set." There was silence. Then David laughed. "Yes, of course." His voice softened. "I'm worried about you, Mom." "I'm fine. You said you were dizzy." I stood up too quickly, assumed you meant the socket set. There was silence. Then David laughed. "Yes, of course." His voice softened. "I'm worried about you, Mom." "I'm fine. You said you were dizzy." I stood up too quickly. "That's not something to dismiss." "I'm not dismissing it." "I already made an appointment for you." "With whom?" "A specialist in Columbus. He evaluates memory and cognitive health." I gripped the phone. Richard's warning echoed in my head. "Do not attend any memory evaluation alone. I never asked for an appointment. You don't have to ask. I'm trying to help. Cancel it." "Mom, cancel it, David." His tone changed. "You've forgotten 2 appointments this month. One was rescheduled. You left your keys in the refrigerator. That happened once. I was carrying groceries. You called Noah by Dad's name at Christmas. I was grieving." David sighed as if I were a difficult child. "This is exactly the problem. You have an explanation for everything, because there is an explanation. You don't see yourself clearly anymore." The words landed harder than I expected. I looked toward the laptop. Richard's face remained frozen on the screen. "Who else thinks this?" I asked. "What? You said I'm not seeing myself clearly. Who else agrees with you?" "Melissa is concerned. Has she said that we've discussed it?" "And Noah don't bring him into this. You already did each and you frightened him in the workshop. Melissa is concerned. Has she said that we've discussed it? And Noah don't bring him into this. You already did when you frightened him in the workshop." The sentence escaped before I could stop it. Silence filled the line. I closed my eyes. I had made a mistake. "What did Noah tell you?" David asked. His voice was low now. "Nothing important." "Mom, he said you took tools from the workshop. That's all I heard something in his question. Not surprise. Fear." "Yes, I lied. That's all." David waited. Then he said, "You should stay away from the workshop until I clean it out. It belongs to me. It's unsafe. You keep saying that about everything I own. I'm trying to protect you. Then listen when I tell you I don't want that appointment." Another long pause followed. "I'll call you later," he said. "When you're calmer." The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, trembling with anger. He had not asked whether I was frightened. He had not asked whether I needed help. He had simply decided my disagreement proved I was confused. I opened my contacts and found Diane Reynolds. Richard and I had known her for nearly 20 years. She had prepared our wills, handled the purchase of a small rental property, and helped us create Noah's education fund. I almost pressed call. Then I remembered Richard's words. "Take the key to First County Bank. Ask for Diane." Perhaps calling from home was not safe. I looked through the window. David's truck was not outside, but I no longer trusted what I could see. I went downstairs, placed the memory card in an envelope, and hid it inside the lining of my purse. The silver key went into my bra where no one could take it without my knowledge. Then I used the landline. Diane answered on the 4th ring. "Reynolds Law Office?" "Diane, it's Stephanie Sanchez." Her voice warmed. Stephanie. How are you? I need to see you. Of course. Is this about Richard's estate? I looked toward the back window and the dark shape of the Woback window and the dark shape of the Wuo RK shop. I think Richard left me a warning. Diane became silent. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. What kind of warning about David? Another pause. Do not tell him you called me, she said. And don't sign anything. RK shop. I think Richard left me a warning. Diane became silent. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. What kind of warning? About David. Another pause. Do not tell him you called me, she said. And don't sign anything. My knees nearly gave way. She already knew enough to be afraid. When can we meet? I asked. Today? Where? Not at my office. That answer frightened me more than anything David had said. Diane lowered her voice. Meet me at First County Bank at 11. Bring whatever Richard left you. Stephanie, come alone. At 10:45, I parked 2 blocks from First County Bank. I did not want David driving past and recognizing my car near the entrance. That thought made me feel foolish. Maple Creek was a small town. People went to the bank every day. I had done nothing wrong. Still, I waited until an older couple entered before I followed them inside. Diane Reynolds stood near the customer service desk. She wore a navy coat and held a leather folder against her chest. Her expression was calm, but she did not greet me with her usual smile. Did anyone follow you? She asked. I don't think so. That isn't the same as no. I looked through the glass doors. No? I came alone. Diane nodded and guided me toward a private office at the back of the bank. A branch manager named Mr. Collins joined us. He had known Richard for years. When he saw the silver key in my hand, his expression tightened. Mr. Sanchez arranged special instructions for this box, he said. What kind of instructions? He requested that it only be opened in your presence with Ms. Reynolds here. I looked at Diane. You knew about this. I knew Richard created a secure deposit arrangement, she said. I did not know what he placed inside. Mr. Collins asked for my identification and signature. My hand shook as I signed. The vault was colder than the rest of the bank. Rows of metal doors covered the walls. Mr. Collins used his key first. Then I inserted Richard's small silver key. The lock turned. Inside the box was a thick stack of documents, several sealed envelopes, and a narrow wooden case Richard had made himself. Diane carried everything to the private office. She closed the door. Stephanie, before we begin, I need you to understand something. Whatever is inside you, do not have to make decisions today. I think Richard already made sure I would have to. Diane studied me for a moment. Then she opened the first folder. On top was our updated will. I recognized Richard's signature and my own. We had signed it 2 years earlier in Diane's office. Diane turned to the property section. The house remains entirely under your control during your lifetime, she said. After your death, it transfers into the family trust for Noah. I stared at her. David told me Richard wanted him to take over the house. He did not. He said the house would eventually belong to him. That is not what this document says. Diane showed me the page. The language was clear. David was not the future owner. Noah was the beneficiary through the trust. A cold pressure spread through my chest. David had not misunderstood. He had lied. Diane opened another document. This is the Sanchez family trust. Richard amended it 18 months ago. Why, I don't know yet. The amendment strengthened the protections around the house and Noah's education fund. It prevented either parent from withdrawing money directly from the trust. Either parent, I asked. David or Melissa. Did Richard believe they would try? Diane did not answer immediately. Instead, she pulled out the bank statements. Several lines had been marked with red circles. The first transfer was $25,000. The second was $18,000. Then $12,000. All had gone from accounts Richard and I used for retirement expenses into an account connected to David's real estate company. I read the dates. Some transfers had occurred while Richard was alive. Others happened within weeks of his death. This cannot be right. Diane placed her finger beside one transaction. Do you recognize this? A scanned authorization form was attached. At the bottom was my name? Stephanie Sanchez. The signature looked almost correct. Almost. But I knew the way I formed the final Z. The line always curved upward. On the page, it fell flat. I did not sign this. Are you certain I would remember authorizing $30,000? There are 4 more forms with the same signature. I looked through them. Each one carried my name. Each one was false. My face became hot. David forged these. We cannot say that yet, Diane replied, but someone did. I wanted her to accuse him. I wanted her to tell me there was no other explanation. Instead, she stayed careful. That frightened me more. She opened another folder. This one contained a document titled Durable Power of Attorney. David was listed as my financial representative. The form gave him authority to access accounts, manage property, arrange loans, and sign documents on my behalf. I felt the room tilt. I never gave him this. Diane examined the final page. Your signature is here. It is not mine. There is also a notary stamp. Diane leaned closer. Kevin Moore. The name was familiar. Kevin worked with David at Maple Creek Realty. I had met him twice at office Christmas parties. He is not a lawyer, I said. He doesn't need to be a lawyer to act as a notary. But he knows David. Yes. The word settled between us. Mr. Collins had remained quiet near the door. Now he cleared his throat. There is another issue. He placed a loan record on the table. The house had been used to secure a line of credit. My house. The home Richard and I had paid off 12 years earlier. The available credit was $150,000. More than half had already been withdrawn. I pushed the paper away. No, Stephanie Diane said gently. No, the house is paid for. It was. This document created a new loan against its value. I never agreed to that. I believe you. The kindness in her voice broke something inside me. I stood and walked to the window. Cars moved along Main Street. A woman pushed a stroller past the bakery. 2 teenagers laughed near the traffic light. The world outside continued as though my life had not just split open. How much I asked? Diane added the figures. Based on what is here, at least $140,000 was transferred or borrowed, possibly more. I turned toward her. Where did it go? Most of it appears connected to David's business. Some went to credit cards. Some was moved again. He stole from us. Diane's eyes did not leave mine. It appears you may be the victim of financial exploitation. I hated the word victim. It made me sound weak, but the papers did not care how strong I felt. They showed what had happened. I returned to the table and opened the envelope labeled, "For Stephanie only." Inside was a letter in Richard's handwriting. Steph, I am sorry. I should have told you when I first discovered what David was doing. He came to me asking for help. He said his company was failing and people would lose their jobs. I gave him one chance. He did not stop. He began using your name. Then he began preparing to take control of more than money. I kept records in the red ledger. Every transfer, every promise, every lie. If that ledger is missing, David found it. Do not blame yourself for trusting our son. Trust is not the wrongdoing. Betrayal is. Richard. I read the letter twice, then a third time. The red ledger. I saw Noah's frightened face. I saw the red metal box under the workshop floor. Diane, I said. David has it. Has what? The ledger. I told her what Noah had seen. I told her about the empty compartment, the rust stain, and David's visit that morning. Diastain and David's visit that morning. Diane's face became pale. Did David see the memory card? No. Does he know you came here? I don't think so. She gathered the documents into neat stacks. From this moment forward, you tell him nothing. Nee's face became pale. Did David see the memory card? No. Does he know you came here? I don't think so. She gathered the documents into neat stacks. From this moment forward, you tell him nothing. He is my son. And right now, he may be trying to take your legal authority away before you can challenge these transactions. The words from Richard's video returned. Do not attend any medical appointment alone. I looked at the forged signature again. How far would he go? Diane placed the power of attorney document inside her folder. That is what we need to find out. My phone vibrated. A message from David appeared. I'm coming over tonight. I have some papers you need to sign. Diane made me promise not to confront David. Every part of me wanted to ignore her. I wanted to drive to his office, drop the forged documents on his desk, and demand to know when my son had decided I was nothing more than an account balance. But Diane held my gaze. If you show him what we have, he may destroy what we do not have. The red ledger, and anything connected to it. He already knows I was searching. Balance. But Diane held my gaze. If you show him what we have, he may destroy what we do not have. The red ledger, and anything connected to it. He already knows I was searching. Suspicion is not knowledge. Let him believe you found nothing. I hated the idea. Pretending to trust David felt like helping him deceive me. Still, I nodded. Diane kept copies of the documents from the deposit box. The originals remained protected at the bank. I took Richard's letter and the memory card home, hiding both inside an old sewing basket David had never touched. At 6 that evening, his truck entered my driveway. Melissa sat beside him. Noah was in the back seat. David carried a leather folder under one arm and a bottle of wine in the other. We thought we'd have dinner with you, he said when I opened the door. You didn't ask. We're family, Mom. We shouldn't need an invitation. His smile looked natural. That frightened me. I let them inside. Melissa hugged me quickly. Her shoulders were stiff. Noah stayed close to her until David turned away. Then he looked at me. I gave him the smallest nod. You did the right thing. His eyes lowered with relief. David placed the folder on my kitchen table. I brought the Cedar Glen paperwork. I told you I'm not moving. It isn't a commitment, just preliminary information. He opened the wine. Richard and I had saved that bottle for our 50th anniversary. David either did not remember or did not care. I prepared soup while Melissa set the table. David talked about property values in Maple Creek. He said houses in my neighborhood were selling quickly. This place could bring more than you think, he said. I am not selling. You keep saying that before hearing the numbers. The number does not matter. It should. You could live comfortably for the rest of your life. I already live comfortably. David looked around the kitchen. The cabinets were old. The wallpaper had faded near the window. Richard's chair remained empty at the head of the table. David saw age. I saw life. After dinner, he pushed the leather folder toward me. Just read through these. I opened it. The first pages described Cedar Glen's meal plans, transportation, and medical services. The photographs showed smiling women playing cards and walking beside a pond. Then the language changed. One form appointed David as my authorized representative during the application process. Another gave him access to financial records. A third allowed him to communicate with real estate agents on my behalf. I turned to the final pages. There it was. Authorization to list and sell my home. This is not preliminary paperwork. David leaned back. It only gives me permission to begin discussions. It gives you permission to sell my house. Not without your approval. The approval is this signature. You're misunderstanding the language. I worked in a school office for 27 years. I know how to read a form. His jaw tightened. Melissa stared at her plate. I looked at her. Did you read these? She glanced at David before answering. David said they were standard. That is not what I asked. Mom, David interrupted. Don't put Melissa in the middle. You brought her here. I brought my family to dinner. And a contract. Noah shifted in his chair. David slid a pen toward me. Sign the information release. We can discuss the rest later. No. Stephanie, Melissa said softly. Maybe David could explain. I understand it. David gave a short laugh. You think you do? The room became still. What does that mean? I asked. He rubbed his forehead as if exhausted. It means you have been forgetting things, such as appointments, bills, where you leave your keys. What does that mean? I asked. He rubbed his forehead as if exhausted. It means you have been forgetting things, such as appointments, bills, where you leave your keys. One appointment was changed by the dentist. You forgot the change. No, you forgot to tell me. His eyes narrowed. He had not expected me to answer so quickly. David leaned forward. At Christmas, you called Noah by Dad's name? Noah looked up. I remembered that moment. He had been sitting at Richard's workbench wearing his grandfather's old safety glasses. My grief had spoken before my mind caught up. I corrected myself immediately. That's not the point. It was one name. You left the stove on last month. I was simmering soup. You went outside for 3 minutes. Melissa finally looked at me. David said the kitchen filled with smoke. There was no smoke. David turned to her. She didn't notice it. My hands tightened beneath the table. He was building a story out of ordinary moments. A forgotten key, a wrong name, a pot on the stove. Small things became dangerous when someone arranged them in the right order. Why are you doing this? I asked. I'm trying to keep you safe. By taking away my house, by making sure you don't lose it because you cannot manage it. Noah knocked over his water. The glass hit the table and rolled onto the floor. David stood sharply. What is wrong with you tonight? I'm sorry, Noah whispered. You've been acting strange since yesterday? Melissa reached for a towel. He's tired. David stared at his son. What did you say to Grandma? Noah went pale. I moved before I had time to think. He told me he misses Richard. David looked at me. Is that all? Yes. Noah's breathing slowed. David picked up the glass and placed it hard on the counter. Go wash your hands. But they're not. Now, Noah left the room. Melissa followed him. The moment they disappeared, David lowered his voice. You need to stop encouraging secrets between me and my son. I did not encourage anything. He should come to me. Perhaps he was afraid of what I held his gaze. You tell me. For 1 second the mask slipped. I saw anger. Then he smiled again. You're tired. We should finish this another time. He gathered the papers but left the folder open. When he went to the bathroom, I watched him pass the coat rack. On his way back, he slipped one hand into the pocket of my winter coat. He searched quickly. Then he opened the small drawer beneath the telephone. I stood in the kitchen doorway. "Looking for something?" David turned. "Your spare keys?" "Why, I was going to make a copy, in case of emergencies. You already have a house key." He paused. "I meant the workshop key. The workshop does not need you." His face hardened. "Neither does the house, apparently." Melissa and Noah returned. David closed the folder. "We're leaving." At the door, Noah hugged me longer than usual. David noticed. "Come on." After their truck disappeared, I locked every door. Then I searched the folder David had nearly forgotten. One paper remained beneath the glossy Cedar Glen brochure. It was not from Cedar Glen. It bore the seal of the Maple County Probate Court. My name appeared at the top. In the matter of Stephanie Sanchez, alleged incompetent adult. I stopped breathing. David had filed a petition requesting emergency guardianship. He claimed I was confused, financially vulnerable, and unable to make safe decisions. He had listed himself as the person who should control my medical care finances and property. The filing date was 3 days earlier. Before Noah warned me. Before I entered the workshop. Before David knew I had found anything. This had not been a reaction. It had been the plan all along. At the bottom of the page was the date of the first hearing. 9 days away. Then I saw the witness list. Melissa Sanchez. And beneath her name, someone else. Dr. Raymond Cole, Cognitive Assessment Specialist. The doctor David had already chosen for me. I called Diane before I even sat down. She answered on the second ring. "David filed for emergency guardianship?" I said. "I know." The calmness in her voice shocked me. "How?" "The court sent notice to my office because Richard listed me as your estate attorney, and you were not going to tell me I received it less than an hour ago." I was about to call. I looked again at the hearing date. 9 days. That is enough time if we move carefully. He has Melissa as a witness. He has a doctor. He has allegations, Diane said. That is not the same as proof. He also has my money. Diane became quiet. "I need you in my office tomorrow morning. I'm bringing in a forensic accountant. What will that do? Follow every dollar." The next morning, I entered through the rear door of Diane's office. A man named Paul Bennett waited in the conference room. He was in his late 50s, with silver glasses and a stack of sharpened pencils arranged beside his laptop. He did not waste time comforting me. I appreciated that. "Mrs. Sanchez," he said, "I need every bank statement, tax return, loan document, and business record you can legally access." Diane placed copies from the deposit box on the table. Paul studied the forged power of attorney first. He enlarged my signature on his screen. "This was not written naturally," he said. "How can you tell the pressure is uneven? Whoever created it likely traced or copied from another document." He placed a genuine signature beside it. The differences were small, but once he pointed them out, I could not stop seeing them. The false signature hesitated at the curves. Mine did not. Paul examined the notary section. "Kevin Moore," he read. "Do you know him? He works with David." Diane had already confirmed Kevin was a licensed notary and a sales associate at Maple Creek Realty. Paul leaned back. "If this document was notarized without Mrs. Sanchez physically appearing, that is serious. Can we prove she was not there?" Diane asked. I looked at the date. October 17th. I was in Cincinnati that week. Both of them turned toward me. "My sister had knee surgery. I stayed with her for 6 days." "Do you have proof?" Paul asked. "Gas receipts? Maybe photographs?" "My sister's hospital records." Diane wrote it down. For the first time, I saw a crack in David's plan. Then Paul opened the account records. For 4 hours, he followed transfers through different banks' credit cards and business accounts. The numbers grew. 25,000. 18,000. 32,000. Smaller withdrawals of 5,000 and 7,000 had been hidden between ordinary household expenses. David had not taken one large amount. He had taken pieces. That made it worse. He had believed small thefts would be easier to forgive. By noon, Paul totaled the known damage. $189,400. I stared at the figure. Richard and I had spent decades saving that money. We were not wealthy. Richard worked with his hands. I worked in a school office. We saved by keeping cars for 10 years and repairing things instead of replacing them. David had erased years of sacrifice with a few signatures. "Where did it go?" I asked. Paul turned his laptop toward me. Most went into Sanchez Property Group, David's company. Then payroll, credit card debt, a failed development project, personal loans. So he was in trouble. He was drowning, Paul said. The answer should have made me pity him. It did not. People in trouble ask for help. They do not steal their mother's name. Paul clicked another file. "This payment interests me." A check for $6,000 had been issued to Dr. Raymond Cole, the cognitive specialist on David's witness list. "What was it for?" Diane asked. "The memo says consulting services." I felt cold. He has never met me. "Not yet," Diane said. Paul found 2 more payments to the same doctor. The total was $11,000. Diane's expression hardened. David did not simply schedule an evaluation. He hired the evaluator. "To say I am incompetent, we cannot prove that yet." I hated how often she said those words. Not yet, not enough, not proven. The truth seemed obvious, but the law demanded each piece in the correct place. Paul closed the laptop. "The transactions establish misuse," he said. "But David may argue Richard approved the transfers. He did not." "I believe you. A judge will need records showing intent." "The red ledger," I said. Diane nodded. "If Richard documented their conversations, it may separate a desperate loan from deliberate fraud. And David has it. Then we find where he took it." I remembered the marks in the workshop. The disturbed dust had led toward the back door. That afternoon, I returned home and waited until David's office closed. Richard's old pickup sat beside the house. David had started using it after the funeral. He said leaving it parked would ruin the engine. He kept the main key, but Richard had hidden a spare inside a ceramic jar in the garage. I found it beneath a layer of rusty screws. The truck smelled like sawdust and David's cologne. I searched the cab first. Nothing. Then I opened the metal toolbox behind the seats. A dark red thread clung to the latch. I held it between my fingers. The strip of fabric from the floor compartment had been the same color. Inside the toolbox, scratches marked the metal bottom. Small flakes of red paint had collected in one corner. The box had been there. I searched beneath work gloves, jumper cables, and a folded tarp. At the bottom, I found a paper receipt. Maple Creek Storage Center, Unit 214. The renter was listed as Sanchez Property Group. The payment had been made 2 days after Richard's funeral. I took out my phone. Before I could photograph it, a voice behind me said, "You really have trouble respecting boundaries." I turned. David stood at the garage entrance. He had removed his tie. His sleeves were rolled up. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. I folded the receipt into my palm. I was looking for Richard's picnic blanket. In my truck. It was his truck. It belongs to me now. No, it belongs to the estate. David took one step closer. "What are you holding?" "Nothing." He looked at my closed hand. "Open it." I almost laughed. He sounded like the father, and I sounded like the child. "I do not take orders from you. Mom, I'm trying to keep this situation from getting uglier." "What situation?" "You know exactly what I mean." He reached toward my hand. I stepped back. "Don't touch me." David stopped. For a second, genuine hurt crossed his face. Then it disappeared. You went to the bank yesterday. My stomach tightened. How would you know Maple Creek is small? Did someone see me? You parked 2 blocks away. That was dramatic. He knew. Perhaps he had followed me. Perhaps Kevin had someone watching. Perhaps the bank visit had triggered an alert connected to the forged power of attorney. I kept my voice level. I needed to discuss Richard's estate. With Diane Reynolds, she is our attorney. She is putting ideas in your head. No one puts ideas in my head. I kept my voice level. I needed to discuss Richard's estate. With Diane Reynolds, she is our attorney. She is putting ideas in your head. No one puts ideas in my head. That is not what the petition says. There it was. He wanted me to know. You left the court notice in my folder, I said. David did not look surprised. I hoped you would read it. You called me incompetent. I said you need protection. You want control. I want to stop you from making decisions that could destroy what Dad built. The cruelty of that sentence nearly broke my composure. Richard had spent his last weeks building protection against David. Yet David stood in front of me pretending to defend his father's legacy. He held out his hand. Give me the paper. I opened my fingers. They were empty. While stepping back, I had slipped the receipt into my coat sleeve. David stared at my palm. Then he looked inside the toolbox. His face changed when he saw the disturbed tarp. I walked toward the house. Behind me, he said, "Stay away from places you do not understand." I did not turn around. Once inside, I locked the door and pulled the receipt from my sleeve. Unit 214. I took a photograph and sent it to Diane. Her reply came almost immediately. Do not go there alone. Then another message appeared. We need a court order before David moves whatever is inside. I looked through the kitchen window. David was still standing beside the truck. He held his phone to his ear, and though I could not hear his words, I saw him glance directly toward the workshop. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David standing beside Richard's truck with his phone pressed to his ear. I kept wondering who he had called. Kevin, the doctor. Someone at the storage facility or someone I had not discovered yet. At 6 the next morning, my cell phone vibrated. Noah. Not a text, a video call. I answered immediately. His face filled the screen. Grandma, he whispered. Mom's still asleep. Where's your dad? He left early. Are you okay? He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't. His lower lip trembled. I need to tell you something. I sat at my kitchen table. I'm listening. I didn't tell you everything. My heart started racing. What do you mean? The red box. He looked over his shoulder before continuing. Dad didn't leave it in Grandpa's workshop. I know he took it. No. His voice became even quieter. He came back the same night. I said nothing. I wanted him to tell the story without interruption. I was pretending to sleep in the truck. He thought you were asleep. Yeah. He walked back into the workshop. Noah swallowed hard. He picked up the red box. Then he put it in Grandpa's truck. I remembered the scratches inside the toolbox. He drove somewhere. Did you go with him? Noah nodded. I stayed in the back seat. He told me not to get out. What happened? There was another man waiting. My fingers tightened around the phone. Do you know him? I've seen him before. Where? At Dad's office. Kevin. It had to be Kevin. They talked for a long time. What did they say? I couldn't hear everything. Noah closed his eyes, trying to remember. But I heard Dad say... He paused. Grandpa wrote everything down. The sentence sent chills through me. He really said that? Yes. What else? He said. Noah frowned. The book has to disappear before court. Court. David already knew legal trouble was coming, long before he filed for guardianship, long before Richard died. What happened next? The other man took the box. Did he leave with it? No. They opened it. You saw inside? No. They stood in front of it. Dad looked really scared. Scared. I've never seen him look like that. I believed him. Noah knew the difference between fear and anger. Then what? They put the box into another truck. Did you recognize the truck? No. But he hesitated again. I took a picture. I nearly dropped my phone. You what? I remembered what Grandpa told me. Richard, even now he was still protecting us. What did Grandpa tell you? If a grown-up tells you to keep a secret that makes you scared, find another grown-up. And if you can't explain it, take a picture. Tears filled my eyes. Richard had prepared Noah without making him afraid. Can you show me? Noah nodded. He opened his photo gallery. The image was blurry. It had clearly been taken through the truck window at night. But it was enough. David stood beside the open toolbox. Kevin Moore stood opposite him. Between them, the red metal box. Across the lid written in black marker. R.S. Richard Sanchez. I covered my mouth. It was real. Everything Noah had said was true. I never deleted it, Noah whispered. I was afraid Dad would find it. You did exactly the right thing. He started crying. Not loudly, just quietly. I don't want Dad to go away. The words broke my heart. I know. I don't want him to be bad. I wished I knew how to answer. Instead, I told him the truth. People can make terrible choices. Does that make them bad? Sometimes, but it doesn't stop us from loving the person we hoped they would be. Noah looked down. Is this my fault? No. You didn't make your father do any of this. I told you. And I'm proud of you. I betrayed him. No. I leaned closer to the screen. You protected your grandfather. You protected me. And someday, you'll understand that telling the truth is never betrayal. He wiped his eyes. I know where the red box went. I stopped breathing. You do? He nodded. The man from Dad's office. Kevin. I think that's his name. He took it. Where? Dad said. Noah searched his memory. Keep it in the storage place until everything's over. Storage? Unit 214? The receipt? Everything fit together? Before I could ask another question, Noah's expression changed. My mom's coming. Grandma? Don't tell Dad we talked. I won't. I love you. I love you too. The call ended. I sat frozen. Then I immediately forwarded the photograph to Diane. She called less than 2 minutes later. Stephanie. You saw it? I did. This is significant. Can we use it? Possibly. It confirms David possessed the red box after Richard's death. And Kevin was involved. I told her everything Noah remembered. Every sentence. Every word. When I repeated David's statement, Grandpa wrote everything down. Diane interrupted. That matters. Why, it proves David knew documentation existed. He wasn't guessing. He was trying to destroy evidence. I looked again at the photograph. Richard's handwriting, his initials, his box. Everything suddenly felt closer. We have enough to search the storage unit. Not yet. I felt my hope collapse. We still need judicial authority. But now we know exactly what we're looking for. She paused. Stephanie. Yes. I need you to prepare for something difficult. What? Noah may eventually need to testify. The words hit me like ice water. No. I'm not saying he definitely will. He's 10 years old. I know. He has already carried far more than any child should. I looked at Richard's empty chair. He shouldn't have to choose between his father and the truth. He shouldn't. But David put him in that position. I ended the call feeling sick. That afternoon, Melissa unexpectedly knocked on my front door. She looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. I only have a minute, she said. Come in. She remained on the porch. I can't. David checks my location. That surprised me. He does. He says it's for safety. Her smile was empty. It isn't. She glanced toward the street. Has David asked you about Noah? Several times. He questioned him again last night. What did Noah say? He said he didn't remember anything. She looked ashamed. I told him to say that. I stared at her. Why? Because I was scared. Of David? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Before leaving, Melissa whispered something that stayed with me all day. If you're right about David, then I'm afraid I don't know who my husband is anymore. She walked quickly back to her car. As she drove away, I noticed another vehicle parked across the street. Dark sedan, tinted windows. The engine was running. The driver lowered his head as if avoiding eye contact. 5 minutes later, the sedan followed Melissa. I watched until both vehicles disappeared. Then my phone buzzed. One new text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions before someone gets hurt. No signature, no explanation, just a threat. For the first time, I realized this was no longer only about my house. It was about keeping my family alive long enough to uncover the truth. I read the anonymous text 3 more times. Stop asking questions before someone gets hurt. There was no name, no phone number, only unknown. I showed it to Diane within minutes. She stared at the screen, then looked back at me. Do not answer it. I wasn't planning to. Good. Do you think David sent it? I don't know. That isn't very comforting. No, she admitted. But it's honest. She leaned forward across her desk. Stephanie, from this point on, assume every move you make is being watched. I thought about the dark sedan parked across the street. I already do. Diane nodded slowly. I've filed an emergency motion asking the court to freeze any additional transactions involving your accounts and property. What happens now? If the judge grants it, David won't be able to borrow more money against the house or move certain assets while this case is pending. And the storage unit, I included that in the request. You think they'll let us search it? Only if we convince the judge there's probable cause that evidence is inside. I handed her Noah's photograph again. And it helps. But photographs alone won't open a locked storage unit. She sighed. We need one more piece. What kind? Something connecting David directly to the contents of the red box. I looked out her office window. How do we find that? Before Diane could answer, her assistant knocked. Melissa Sanchez is here. Both of us froze. I didn't know she was coming, Diane said. Should I leave? No. A moment later, Melissa stepped inside. She looked worse than the day before. Her eyes were swollen. She had obviously been crying. I only have 15 minutes, she whispered. David thinks I'm grocery shopping. She sat without being asked. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, she looked at me. I owe you an apology. I waited. I should have listened sooner. What changed? Melissa reached into her purse. She removed several folded papers, bank statements, credit card bills, printed emails. I started looking after Noah talked to you. She pushed everything across the table. These are from David's home office. Diane immediately began reading. What are they? Credit card bills? Printed emails. I started looking after Noah talked to you. She pushed everything across the table. These are from David's home office. Diane email from David's home office. Diane immediately began reading. What are they? Melissa swallowed. David told me Richard paid off our debts. He didn't. I know that now. She pointed to one statement. The money came from your retirement account. Immediately began reading. What are they? Melissa swallowed. David told me Richard paid off our debts. He didn't. I know that now. She pointed to one statement. The money came from your retirement account. Another. This one came from the home equity line. Another. This payment covered our mortgage. She wiped away tears. I thought David had rebuilt the business. He told me investors finally came through. But they didn't. Melissa shook her head. No. He kept borrowing. From everyone. She wiped away tears. I thought David had rebuilt the business. He told me investors finally came through. But they didn't. Melissa shook her head. No. He kept borrowing. From everyone. Banks. Friends. Family. Then from you. I felt strangely calm. Not because I was less hurt. Because every new truth left less room for doubt. Melissa looked directly at me. There's something else. What? She took a folded legal document from her purse. I signed this. Diane unfolded it. It was a sworn statement. Melissa had declared that I frequently forgot conversations, wandered outside at night, became confused while driving, and repeatedly failed to recognize family members. Every word was false. You signed this? I asked quietly. She nodded. David said it was only temporary. He said the judge wouldn't even read it. He told me it would help move you somewhere safe. My chest tightened. You knew it wasn't true. I told him that. What did he say? Melissa looked down. He said grief changes people. He kept showing me every little mistake. One forgotten appointment, one burned pan, one wrong name. Eventually, I started wondering if maybe he was right. Silence settled over the room. Finally, Diane spoke. Melissa. She looked up. Are you willing to testify that this statement is false? Melissa closed her eyes. If I do, David will know. Yes. He'll divorce me. Probably. He'll never forgive me. I thought about Noah, his frightened face, his whispered confession. I reached across the table. Melissa. She looked at me. You're not choosing between me and David. You're choosing between truth and lies. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. She nodded once. I'll testify. Diane immediately began making notes. This changes everything. Before leaving, Melissa hesitated near the door. One more thing. What? David keeps talking about Noah's college fund. My stomach tightened. What about it? He says your lawyer is lying. He says Richard R.D. emptied the account before he died. David keeps talking about Noah's college fund. My stomach tightened. What about it? He says your lawyer is lying. He says Richard emptied the account before he died. Diane's expression changed instantly. No. She opened another folder. I've never checked that trust separately. She logged into a secure banking portal. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Then she looked up. Oh my God. What? The trust isn't empty. That isn't the problem. She turned the screen toward us. Nearly all of it has been withdrawn. When over the last 14 months, I stared at the transactions. 20,000, 15,000, A 20,000, 15,000. thousand. Every withdrawal carried authorization under the same forged power of attorney. David hadn't only stolen from me, he had stolen from his own son. Melissa covered her mouth. No, he told me the market crashed. T-thousand. Every withdrawal carried authorization under the same forged power of attorney. David hadn't only stolen from me, he had stolen from his own son. Melissa covered her mouth. No, he told me the market crashed. He said Richard moved the money. Diane shook her head. No, he took it. Nobody spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, I whispered the only question that mattered. How could he do that to Noah? No one answered, because there was no answer. Melissa stood. I have to go. She looked at me one last time. I don't expect forgiveness. I just don't want Noah growing up believing this is normal. After she left, Diane quietly closed the office door. She'll be a powerful witness. If she follows through, she will. You sound certain. I've seen enough guilty people. They all reach a moment when silence becomes heavier than truth. I wished I shared her confidence. An hour later, I returned home. The house felt unusually quiet. Richard's chair still faced the kitchen window. His coffee mug remained on the highest shelf. Everything looked the same. Nothing felt the same. Just before sunset, my phone buzzed again. David. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. What? His voice sounded strangely calm. Melissa took Noah. My heartbeat stopped. What? She packed bags. She left? I don't know where they are. I said nothing. Have you seen they are? I said nothing. Have you seen them? No. Another lie. David sighed. You've turned my family against me. The accusation stunned me. I did yes. First Noah, now Melissa. You've poisoned them. I closed my eyes. You're wrong. Known them, no. Another lie. David sighed. You've turned my family against me. The accusation stunned me. I did yes. First Noah, now Melissa. You've poisoned them. I closed my eyes. You're wrong. No. You're afraid. Silence. Then David spoke again. If you keep doing this, there won't be a family left to save. The line went dead. I stood alone in my kitchen staring at the phone. Then I remembered something Richard once told Noah while they were building a birdhouse. The truth doesn't destroy good families. It only reveals what was already broken. For the first time since Richard died, I realized this fight was no longer about protecting memories. It was about protecting Noah's future. And I finally understood something else. David wasn't trying to save his family. He was trying to save himself at any cost. The next morning, I unlocked Richard's old laptop again. I had watched his first video so many times that I could almost recite every sentence. But Diane had reminded me of something I had overlooked. Richard never did anything halfway, she had said. If he hid one recording, he may have hidden another. I inserted the memory card. The same folders appeared. Most were still locked. This time, instead of clicking randomly, I studied the file names. One folder caught my attention. Archive. It had no date, no description, just one word. I tried Richard's birthday again. Nothing. I tried our wedding anniversary. Nothing. Then I remembered something Noah had said only days earlier. Grandpa always said their wedding day was the happiest day of his life. Not the anniversary, the wedding day itself. I entered the full date. The folder opened. My heart nearly stopped. Inside were scanned documents, audio recordings, and one final video. Its title was simple. If you found this. I clicked it. Richard appeared on the screen wearing the same flannel shirt, but this time he looked even more exhausted. He smiled when the recording began. If you're watching this, Steph, then Diane probably helped you find it. A tear rolled down my cheek. You always were the smarter one, he said with a tired laugh. I only hid these files because I knew David would eventually find the memory card. I leaned closer. He'll think he found everything. But he won't. Richard reached beside him and picked up a thick red notebook. The red ledger. The same one Noah had seen inside the metal box. This book contains every conversation David and I had after I discovered the missing money. He opened it slowly. Each page was filled with dates, amounts, handwritten notes, and bank reference numbers. I recorded every promise, every excuse, every lie. Richard looked directly into the camera. The first time I confronted David, he cried. I believed him. He told me the real estate market had collapsed. He said employees would lose their homes if he couldn't keep the business alive. He promised he'd repay every dollar. Richard lowered his eyes. I wanted to believe my son. So I gave him another chance. The screen cut to an audio recording. I heard Richard's voice, then David's. Dad, I swear this is temporary. I'll pay everything back. I just need 6 months, Richard asked quietly. Did you sign your mother's name? A long silence followed. Finally, David answered. Yes. My hands began shaking. It was his voice, clear, unmistakable. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. I was protecting my family. No. Richard's voice became harder. You were protecting yourself. The recording ended. Another began immediately. This one had been made months later. Richard sounded different, more tired, more disappointed. I checked the accounts again. You lied to me, David answered without emotion. I'll fix it. When, soon, you borrowed against the house. It isn't your house anymore. Richard became silent. What did you just say? David sighed. Mom can't handle finances. When she starts forgetting more things, I'll take over. My blood ran cold. Richard whispered one sentence. You've been planning this. David didn't deny it. Instead, he said something that made me feel physically sick. It's easier this way. When Mom is declared incompetent, the house won't be a problem. The recording stopped. I covered my mouth. Richard had recorded everything, every admission, every manipulation, every step. The video returned. If you're still watching, Richard said softly, then I need to confess something. His eyes filled with tears. I failed. I shook my head. No? You didn't. Of course he couldn't hear me. I kept believing I could save David. I kept thinking one more conversation would change him. I was wrong. Richard looked away from the camera. My greatest mistake wasn't trusting David. It was trying to protect you from the truth. I thought I was carrying the burden for both of us. I only made it heavier. I cried openly now. He wasn't speaking about money. He was apologizing for leaving me alone. If I die before fixing this, don't spend your life protecting David from consequences. Protect yourself. Protect Noah. Richard closed the red ledger. Because someone in this family still deserves an honest future. The screen faded to black. Then another file opened automatically. A computer screen appeared. Richard was recording himself setting up an encrypted backup. He copied every page of the red ledger, every recording, every scanned document. Then he clicked a program labeled Delayed Delivery. He looked into the webcam one final time. This system checks whether I log in every week. If I stop logging in for 6 months, everything automatically goes to Diane Reynolds. He smiled sadly. David will probably steal the notebook. I expect that. He'll probably destroy the paper. I expect that too. But he can't destroy what he doesn't know exists. The recording ended. I stared at the blank screen for nearly a minute. Richard had known. He knew David would find the red ledger. He knew the red metal box would become a target. He had planned for failure, not because he expected to lose, because he expected David to cheat. I immediately called Diane. She answered before the first ring finished. I found another video. I was hoping you would. You knew I received something this morning. What? The automated delivery. I stopped breathing. It worked. Yes. The entire encrypted archive arrived at my office exactly at 9 o'clock. Richard's backup had survived. The system had done exactly what he designed it to do. What was inside? I asked. Everything. The ledger. The recordings? Scanned documents? There are over 400 files. I leaned against the kitchen counter. So David stole the notebook. For nothing. Not exactly, Diane replied. He stole the original. But Richard left us the truth. I almost laughed through my tears. For the first time since Richard died, I felt something stronger than grief. Hope. Real hope. Because David had spent months chasing one notebook without realizing Richard had already defeated him. For the first time since Richard died, I believed we could actually win. Not because David had become weaker, because Richard had quietly built a bridge for me long before I knew I would need one. 3 days remained before the guardianship hearing. Those 3 days would decide everything. The morning after finding Richard's archive, Diane called me before breakfast. The judge signed one of our motions. I nearly dropped my coffee. Which one? The temporary freeze. Relief washed over me. So David can't move the money anymore. Not without violating a court order. And the storage unit. She paused. Not yet. My excitement faded. But something else happened. What? David has been notified. I understood immediately. He knows we're fighting back. Yes. And people become unpredictable when they realize they're losing. By noon, the front doorbell rang. I checked through the peephole. David. He stood alone. No folder, no smile, no pretending. I opened the door only halfway. What do you want? We need to talk. I disagree. Mom. I said no. He looked exhausted. His beard had grown in unevenly. His eyes were bloodshot. For a brief moment, I saw the little boy who used to fall asleep on Richard's shoulder after Little League games. Then I remembered the recordings, the forged signatures. Noah, Melissa. The memory disappeared. David took a deep breath. Melissa left. I know. She took Noah. I know. She won't answer my calls. I remained silent. I've lost my family. No. You threw them away. His jaw tightened. You think this is easy for me? I don't know. I've never stolen from my parents. He looked away. I made mistakes. You committed crimes. His eyes snapped back toward mine. You've been talking to Diane. I've been listening to your father. That sentence hit him harder than I expected. His face went pale. What does that mean? It means Richard told me the truth. He lied. No. He finally stopped protecting you. David's breathing became uneven. He hated lawyers. He hated what you forced him to become. For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, David whispered something I never expected to hear. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I almost believed him. Almost. Then I remembered another sentence from the recordings. When Mom is declared incompetent, the house won't be a problem. That wasn't panic. That was planning. What do you want? I asked again. He looked directly into my eyes. Drop the case. No. I'll return the money. You don't have it. I'll borrow it. You already did. I'll sell the business. It isn't worth enough. His shoulders slumped. Please. The word sounded genuine, but genuine regret and genuine accountability are not the same thing. You aren't sorry because you stole. You're sorry because Richard prepared for you. He stared at me. You found something. I said nothing. You found the ledger. No. His eyes narrowed. You did. You spent months chasing the wrong thing. Fear appeared for the first time. Real fear. What are you talking about? I smiled sadly. Richard was always one step ahead. David turned without another word. He walked to his truck. He sat behind the wheel. But he didn't start the engine. Instead, he lowered his head onto the steering wheel. I watched from the doorway for almost 10 minutes before he finally drove away. I hoped he was thinking. I feared he was planning. That evening, Diane called again. We have a problem. What now? Kevin Moore disappeared. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He resigned yesterday. His office is empty. His phone has been disconnected. What about his house? He isn't there. He packed everything. He left during the night. He ran. Diane sighed. I believe so. Does David know? I suspect David helped him. Another witness gone. Another piece of evidence trying to disappear. But then Diane added something unexpected. Kevin made one mistake. What? He forgot his office computer. My heart jumped. The police have it. They'll search it. They already have a warrant. For the first time in days, luck seemed to be on our side. The following afternoon, I drove to Diane's office again. Paul, the forensic accountant, was waiting with a thick binder. I finished the timeline. He spread dozens of pages across the conference table. Every withdrawal, every forged signature, every loan, every transfer, every payment. Each event connected to the next by arrows and dates. The pattern was undeniable. David hadn't stolen impulsively. He had built a system. One account funded another. One fake signature justified the next. One lie covered 5 more. Paul pointed to the first page. It began almost 3 years ago. Earlier than any of us had realized. He started with small transfers. Then larger ones. When Richard questioned him, the guardianship plan began. Richard hadn't been imagining anything. David's scheme had grown over years. Then Diane received an email. She opened it, read it once, then smiled. You're going to like this. What? The police recovered deleted files from Kevin's computer. I leaned forward. What kind of files? Invoices? Emails? Scanned contracts? And she looked at me. A draft guardianship petition? What? It was created 8 months before Richard died. The room became completely silent. 8 months. David hadn't invented guardianship after Richard's death. He had planned it while Richard was still alive. The realization hit me like a wave. Richard hadn't been dying peacefully. He had been racing against time, trying to protect me before David made his move. Paul quietly closed his binder. I think your husband knew exactly how much time he had. I nodded through tears. He wasn't organizing his estate. He was building my defense. Late that night, after everyone had gone home, I walked into Richard's workshop one more time. The room looked different now. Not because anything had changed, because I finally understood it. Every tool, every hidden compartment, every note, every carefully placed clue. Richard hadn't been leaving me a treasure hunt. He had been teaching me not to give up. I rested my hand on the old blue vise. You knew I'd be scared. The workshop remained silent. You also knew I'd keep going. I smiled through tears. You always believed in me more than I believed in myself. As I turned off the lights, my phone vibrated. One message from Diane. Court moved the hearing up. Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow. Everything Richard had prepared. Everything Noah had risked. Everything Melissa had confessed. Everything Diane had built. Everything would be tested in less than 12 hours. I locked the workshop door. Looked once more toward the house Richard had spent 45 years protecting, and silently promised him one thing. Tomorrow. I would finish what he started. I arrived at the courthouse 40 minutes early. I wanted time to breathe. Instead, I spent those 40 minutes watching people walk through the metal detectors while wondering whether my entire future would be decided before lunchtime. Diane met me in the lobby. She carried 2 large trial binders and a slim black laptop. You look ready, I said. I look organized. There's a difference. She smiled. There is. Paul joined us moments later. He carried another box filled with financial records. The prosecutor's office sent an investigator, he said. They'll be observing. Does that help us? It means they're paying attention. That alone gave me hope. At exactly 9 o'clock, David entered the courthouse. He wasn't alone. His attorney walked beside him. Behind them came Dr. Raymond Cole. I recognized him immediately from the invoices Paul had uncovered. The man who had accepted thousands of dollars before ever evaluating me. David looked directly at me. His expression held no anger, only determination. Then I noticed someone else. Melissa. She stepped through the entrance, holding Noah's hand. David froze. He clearly hadn't expected them to appear. Neither had I. Melissa walked straight toward us. I'll testify, she said quietly. I promised. Noah hugged me without saying a word. His small arms reminded me why none of us could quit now. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. The judge entered promptly. Everyone stood. Within minutes, the hearing began. David's attorney spoke first. He described me as an elderly widow struggling with grief. He said I had become increasingly forgetful, increasingly vulnerable, increasingly unable to manage my affairs. Each sentence sounded calm, professional, reasonable. That frightened me more than shouting ever could. Then he called Dr. Cole. The doctor adjusted his glasses before taking the witness stand. Have you evaluated Mrs. Sanchez? David's attorney asked. I have. When? 2 days ago. I looked at Diane. We both knew that was impossible. I had never met the man. The attorney continued. What were your conclusions? In my professional opinion, Mrs. Sanchez demonstrates early cognitive decline. He listed symptoms, memory impairment, poor judgment, financial vulnerability. Everything sounded convincing. until Diane stood. "Dr. Cole?" She approached slowly. "Have we met before today?" "No." "You evaluated my client?" "Yes." "Where?" "My office." "What day?" He named a Tuesday. Diane nodded. Then she handed him a calendar. "Mrs. Sanchez was in my office with me from 9 in the morning until almost 4 in the afternoon." She placed security camera records on the evidence table. "Would you like to change your answer?" The courtroom became very quiet. Dr. Cole swallowed. "I may have confused the dates." "No." Diane's voice remained calm. "You confused the patient." She displayed another document, the invoice Paul had found. "You billed David Sanchez $11,000 before your supposed evaluation." David's attorney stood immediately. "Objection." The judge studied the document. "Overruled." Diane continued. "Doctor, were you hired to evaluate Mrs. Sanchez, or hired to support a conclusion already decided?" He hesitated. "I decline to answer." The judge frowned. "You may answer." The doctor looked toward David. That was all anyone needed to see. His credibility disappeared in a single glance. Next came Melissa. She walked to the witness stand with trembling hands. David refused to look at her. "Mrs. Sanchez," Diane began, "did you previously sign an affidavit supporting guardianship?" "Yes." "Was it truthful?" Melissa closed her eyes. "No." "Why did you sign it?" "Because my husband convinced me." "What did he tell you?" "He said Stephanie was becoming dangerous." "Did you personally observe the events described in your affidavit?" "No." "So, they were false?" "Yes." David's attorney tried to interrupt. The judge denied the objection. Melissa continued speaking. "I believed David." "I shouldn't have. He manipulated me." "He manipulated all of us." When she stepped down, I saw tears running down David's face. Whether they were genuine or strategic, I no longer knew. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible, promised to tell the truth. Diane asked simple questions first. My work history, my marriage, Richard's illness. Then she asked the question everything had been leading toward. "Mrs. Sanchez? Did your husband leave any record explaining his concerns?" "Yes." She handed me headphones. The courtroom speakers came alive. Richard's voice filled the room. "Dad, I swear this is temporary." David's voice answered immediately. "I signed Mom's name." A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. The recording continued. Every admission, every excuse, every lie. When it ended, nobody moved, not even David. Diane played the second recording. "When Mom is declared incompetent, the house won't be a problem." This time, even the judge leaned forward. The silence afterward felt enormous. Then Diane introduced the financial timeline. Paul explained every transfer, every forged signature, every fraudulent loan. The evidence fit together perfectly, like puzzle pieces Richard had spent years collecting. Finally, Diane looked toward the judge. "Your Honor, this is not a case about an elderly woman unable to manage her affairs. This is a case about a son attempting to use the legal system to complete a financial fraud, already years in progress." She sat down. For several long moments no one spoke. Then something unexpected happened. David stood. His attorney grabbed his sleeve. "Sit down." David ignored him. "I want to say something." The judge hesitated. "Proceed." David faced me. "Not the judge, not the lawyers. Me. I never wanted Dad to die." "I know. I loved him. I know. I didn't plan all of this." Richard's recordings echoed inside my mind. "Yes, you did." David continued. I just kept believing I'd fix everything before anyone found out. There it was. Not innocence, not denial. Only regret for getting caught. He looked toward Melissa. I'm sorry. Then Noah. I'm sorry. Finally back to me. I'm sorry, Mom. For a second, I saw my little boy again. The child who once cried because he accidentally broke Richard's fishing rod. The child who used to leave handwritten Mother's Day cards under my pillow. Then I remembered another voice. Richard's. Protect yourself. Protect Noah. I stood, asked permission to speak. The judge nodded. I looked directly at David. I believe you're sorry. His eyes filled with hope, but not for the reasons that matter. The hope disappeared. I forgive you. His mouth opened slightly. Forgiveness was not what he expected. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Richard had taught me that. Love without accountability isn't love, it's surrender. I refused to surrender. The judge announced a brief recess before issuing his decision. As everyone stood, the courtroom doors opened. A county investigator hurried inside, carrying a sealed evidence envelope. He walked directly to the judge, whispered something. The judge's eyebrows rose. Then he opened the envelope. Inside was a single document recovered that very morning from Kevin Moore's abandoned office. The judge looked at it for nearly 30 seconds, then slowly lifted his eyes toward David. Mr. Sanchez, I believe you should remain seated. My heart pounded. Whatever had just been discovered, was important enough to change everything. The courtroom fell silent. No one moved. Not the attorneys, not the spectators, not even David. The judge continued reading the document that had just arrived from the county investigator. Every second felt impossibly long. Finally, he placed the paper on the bench. Mr. Sanchez, he said quietly, did you authorize Kevin Moore to prepare legal documents concerning your mother before your father passed away? David looked toward his attorney. His attorney slowly shook his head silently, telling him not to answer. I invoke my rights, David said. The judge nodded once. That is your right. He turned toward the investigator. Please summarize your findings. The investigator stepped forward. This document was recovered from the hard drive of Kevin Moore's office computer. He held up a printed email. It contains instructions sent from David Sanchez approximately 8 months before Richard Sanchez died. He began reading. Prepare guardianship packet. We need everything ready before Dad changes the estate again. A murmur spread through the courtroom. The investigator continued. Once Mom is declared incompetent, ownership questions become much easier. I closed my eyes. Richard had been right. Every fear, every suspicion, every hidden note. None of it had been paranoia. David had planned every step. The investigator handed several more pages to the judge. Additional emails discuss forged signatures, notary scheduling, and financial transfers. David's attorney stood immediately. We request additional time to review these materials. Diane stood just as quickly. These materials were recovered this morning and immediately disclosed to all parties. The judge looked toward David's attorney. Request denied. I watched David for the first time since the hearing began. He looked smaller, not physically, emotionally. The confidence that had carried him into the courtroom was gone. Then the judge spoke. This court has reviewed the testimony, financial evidence, recorded admissions, and newly recovered communications. He removed his glasses. I find no credible evidence that Stephanie Sanchez is incapable of managing her own affairs. My hands began shaking. The petition for emergency guardianship is denied. Relief swept through my entire body. But the judge wasn't finished. I further find substantial evidence suggesting intentional financial exploitation. He looked directly at the county investigator. I am referring this matter to the prosecutor's office for immediate criminal review. The courtroom exploded into whispers. David closed his eyes. Melissa quietly cried. Noah reached for my hand. The judge struck his gavel once. Order. Then he looked back at David. Mr. Sanchez, you are ordered to surrender any remaining financial authority related to your mother's accounts immediately. He paused. You are also prohibited from transferring, selling, destroying, or concealing any property connected to this investigation. Diane leaned toward me. It's over. I wanted to believe her. But experience had taught me something. Nothing ended quietly. As people began leaving the courtroom, David remained seated. His attorney packed documents into a briefcase without speaking. Eventually, David stood. He walked slowly toward me. No one stopped him. Perhaps everyone believed there was nothing left to say. Maybe they were wrong. He stopped only a few feet away. I'm sorry. I looked at him. You already said that. I mean it now. What changed? I lost. I nodded. Exactly. He frowned. You think I only regret getting caught? I know you do. His shoulders slumped. I don't know how things got this far. You made one choice. Then another. And another. Until lying became easier than telling the truth. He lowered his head. I can't fix this. No, you can't. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he asked the question I never expected. Did Dad hate me? My heart broke all over again. No. He loved you. He never stopped. David looked surprised. He recorded everything. He prepared everything. Why? Because he hoped one day you would finally tell the truth. Fresh tears filled David's eyes. I failed him. Yes. He nodded slowly. I did. Court deputies approached, not to arrest him, only to remind everyone the hearing had ended. David quietly walked away. He never looked back. Outside, the courthouse reporters had already gathered. Apparently, someone had leaked information about the hearing. Microphones appeared. Cameras flashed. I wasn't prepared for any of it. Diane stepped in front of me. My client has no statement. She guided me toward the parking lot. Halfway there, someone called my name. I turned. It was the county investigator. I thought you should know something. What? We've already obtained a warrant. For what? The storage unit, Unit 214. My pulse quickened. When? Right now. He glanced toward his watch. Our team should already be there. Diane smiled for the first time all day. If the notebook survived, we'll know soon. Instead of going home, all of us drove directly to Maple Creek Storage Center. Police vehicles surrounded Building C. Yellow tape blocked the entrance. An evidence technician carried numbered boxes toward a van. The investigator met us near Unit 214. The lock had already been cut. My stomach dropped. Someone got here first. He nodded. Probably last night. Was everything gone? No. He opened the storage door. Inside stood old furniture, several filing cabinets, and dozens of cardboard boxes. Most had already been searched. One evidence table displayed everything recovered: business ledgers, property files, computers, external hard drives. Then I saw it, the red metal box. My breath caught. It's here. The investigator nodded. It was hidden inside an old refrigerator. I walked closer. The lid remained scratched. Richard's initials were still visible. What was inside? The investigator looked toward Diane. The notebook. My eyes filled with tears. It survived. Yes. David never found it. He had stolen the box. But Kevin had apparently hidden the notebook separately inside the storage unit, perhaps intending to protect himself if David ever turned against him. Inside the ledger, investigators discovered handwritten notes continuing even after the recordings I had already heard. Richard had documented every meeting, every payment, every excuse, every warning. Near the final pages rested a folded envelope. The investigator carefully handed it to me. My name appeared across the front. Stephanie, Richard's handwriting. I carefully opened it. Inside was only one page. My dearest Steph, if this letter reaches you, then everything happened exactly as I feared. Which also means something else happened exactly as I hoped. You kept going. I know this journey has hurt you. I know you've had to see parts of our son neither of us wanted to believe existed. Please remember this. The truth isn't proof that love failed. It's proof that love tried. Take care of Noah. Help him become the man David forgot how to be. And when all of this is finally over, open the old cedar chest in our bedroom. I left one last surprise there. Not evidence. Something happier. You've earned that. I folded the letter carefully, held it against my chest. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not because the pain had disappeared, because Richard had once again reminded me that our story wasn't ending with betrayal. It was finally making room for hope. I held Richard's letter all the way home. I was afraid that if I let go of it, the feeling would disappear. For months, every room in the house had reminded me of loss. Now, for the first time, they reminded me of love. Richard's final instruction echoed in my mind. Open the old cedar chest in our bedroom. Not evidence. Something happier. I carried the letter upstairs. Our bedroom looked exactly as we had left it. His reading glasses still rested on the nightstand. His favorite novel remained face down beside the lamp. I had never been able to move those things. Today, they no longer felt like unfinished grief. They felt like company. The cedar chest sat beneath the bedroom window. Richard built it himself on our 25th anniversary. The hinges squeaked as I lifted the lid. Inside were old blankets, Christmas ornaments, photo albums. A small wooden box rested beneath everything else. Unlike the red metal box, this one carried no secrets, only my name. Steph. I smiled before I even opened it. Inside lay dozens of handwritten letters. Each one had a date. Every anniversary, every birthday, every Christmas. Some had never been given. Richard had written them over the years and quietly saved them. The first letter simply read, "For the day you need to remember who you are." My hands trembled as I unfolded it. Steph, you think you're ordinary. You've always believed I was the brave one. You were wrong. I fixed broken furniture. You fixed broken hearts. I built houses. You built our family. When David failed his math classes, you stayed awake every night helping him. When my business almost closed in 1998, you worked weekends without complaining. When Noah was born, I watched you become the grandmother every child deserves. Never let one person's choices convince you your life meant less than it did. You are the strongest person I've ever known. I love you, always. Richard. By the time I finished reading, I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. For months, I had been surviving because Richard left me clues. Now I realized he had also left me comfort. There were more letters. One for Noah, one for Melissa, even one addressed to David. I stared at that envelope for a long time. Part of me wanted to open it immediately. Another part knew it wasn't mine. I placed it carefully aside. Then I heard a car outside. Melissa. She stepped out with Noah. They carried 2 small overnight bags. I hurried downstairs. Melissa looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry to arrive without calling." "You never need permission." She smiled weakly. I wasn't sure. I hugged her before she could say anything else. "Come inside." Noah ran directly toward the workshop. "I'll be back," he shouted. Richard would have smiled. Melissa remained near the kitchen. "I filed for divorce." I wasn't surprised. "When, this afternoon, how do you feel?" She laughed softly. "I have no idea." "Scared. Relieved. Heartbroken. All at once." I nodded. "That sounds honest." She looked around the kitchen. "I keep expecting David to walk through the door." "I know. I spent so many years believing every explanation. He always had one. I thought good wives stood beside their husbands." I poured us both tea. "Good wives don't help destroy innocent people." She lowered her eyes. "I still signed those papers." "Yes. I'll regret that forever." "You'll also spend the rest of your life making better choices." She looked at me. "You really forgive me." "I do." She cried quietly. Not because I forgave her, because she hadn't forgiven herself yet. Later that afternoon, Noah returned from the workshop carrying Richard's old birdhouse. "I fixed it." He proudly showed me a loose corner he had glued back together. "Grandpa would have liked that." "He taught me." I smiled. "He certainly did." Then Noah noticed the wooden box still sitting on the dining table. "What's that? Something Grandpa left?" "Can I see?" I hesitated, then handed him the envelope with his name. He carefully opened it. Inside was a single folded page. "Dear Noah, if you're reading this, then you've already proven something important. You told the truth even when it was difficult. Never lose that. People will tell you honesty is expensive. They're right. But lies always cost more. Take care of your grandmother. She won't ask for help. Offer it anyway. Love your mother. She's stronger than she realizes. As for your father, remember this. A person's worst decision should never become your excuse to make the same one. You choose the kind of man you'll become. Every day, love Grandpa." Noah read it twice, then folded it carefully. "I'm going to keep this forever. I think Grandpa hoped you would." That evening, Diane stopped by the house. She looked happier than I had ever seen her. The prosecutor officially filed charges. When, an hour ago. What happens now? The criminal case begins. And me, your civil matters are over. She handed me several documents. The house, the trust, the retirement accounts. Everything had been legally restored. We'll recover what we can. What if some money is gone forever? She smiled gently. Then it's gone. You already recovered the important things. I looked around the room. What things? Your name, your dignity, your family. She was right. Money mattered. But it wasn't everything. After Diane left, Melissa prepared dinner while Noah set the table. For the first time in months, the house sounded alive again. Conversation, laughter, footsteps. Even silence felt different. After dinner, I walked into the workshop alone. The blue vise still stood where Richard left it. I rested my hand against the cold metal. You did it. The words escaped before I realized I had spoken. You protected us. Outside, I heard Noah laughing with Melissa. The sound drifted through the open workshop door. Richard never got to hear that laughter again. But somehow, I believed he knew. Before leaving the workshop, I placed David's unopened letter back inside the wooden box. One day, if he truly wanted to become a different man, perhaps he would earn the right to read it. Until then, some gifts had to wait. As I switched off the workshop lights, my phone vibrated. One message from the county jail. David Sanchez has requested a visit. I stared at the screen. For a long time, I couldn't decide what surprised me more. That he wanted to see me, or that my first feeling wasn't anger anymore. It was sadness. I did not visit David the next day, or the day after that. Some wounds need silence before words can reach them. Instead, I stayed home. For the first time in months, I wasn't searching for clues. I wasn't hiding documents. I wasn't waiting for another knock on the door. The house finally felt like home again. 3 weeks later, the prosecutor formally announced the charges: forgery, financial exploitation, fraud, identity theft, evidence tampering. Kevin Moore accepted a plea agreement and agreed to testify. The recordings Richard had preserved became the foundation of the case. There would still be a trial. There would still be difficult days ahead. But the hardest part? Believing my own memory. Believing Richard. Believing myself. That part was finally over. One Saturday morning, Noah knocked on my bedroom door. "Grandma, come in." He held Richard's old toolbox. "I want to learn." "Learn what?" "Everything Grandpa knew." I smiled. "I don't know everything he knew." "You know enough." That afternoon, we spent 3 hours in the workshop. I taught him how to measure twice before cutting once, how to sharpen a chisel, how to sand wood with the grain instead of against it. Every lesson reminded me of Richard. Every laugh reminded me of hope. At one point, Noah looked around the workshop and asked quietly, "Do you still get sad in here?" I thought carefully before answering. "Yes." "Then why do you come here?" "Because sadness isn't the only thing I find here anymore." "What else?" "Your grandfather." He looked confused. Not his body. His kindness. His patience. The things he taught us. Those are still here. Noah nodded slowly. "I think I understand." "I think you do." A month later, Melissa found a small apartment only 15 minutes away. Not because she wanted distance, because she wanted Noah to grow up close to family. One evening, she came over carrying a photo album. I found these. Inside were photographs from every stage of David's life: birthday parties, fishing trips, graduation, Richard teaching him to ride a bicycle. Melissa looked at one picture for a long time. "He wasn't always like this." "No, he wasn't." "What happened?" I answered honestly. "I don't know. Sometimes people make one selfish decision, then another. And after enough years, they forget who they used to be." She quietly closed the album. "I hope Noah never forgets." "He won't." "How can you be so sure?" "Because he's already choosing differently." Months passed. The garden Richard planted began blooming again. The workshop filled with small projects Noah and I built together. Melissa laughed more often. Even Diane stopped by occasionally for coffee instead of legal paperwork. Life did not return to what it had been. It became something new. One autumn afternoon, I finally opened the last unopened envelope. The one addressed to David. I had wondered about it for months. I knew I shouldn't read it, but after speaking with David's attorney, I learned he had refused every visitor. Even me. He said he wasn't ready. Perhaps someday he would be. Until then, the letter remained only words on paper. I carefully resealed it. One day, if David truly wanted to rebuild what he had destroyed, I would give it to him. Not before. Winter arrived. On Christmas Eve, Noah handed me a wrapped package. I made it. Inside was a small wooden frame. Not perfect. The corners weren't completely even. One side carried a tiny scratch. It was beautiful. Inside the frame rested a photograph of Richard and me dancing in our backyard many years earlier. On the back, Noah had burned words into the wood with a small engraving tool. Tell the truth, protect your family, build something that lasts. I ran my fingers across the letters. Grandpa would have loved this. I hope so. He helped me. I looked around the room. Melissa stood beside the Christmas tree. Diane had joined us for dinner. Paul dropped off homemade pie. The house felt full. Not because everyone was present, because love still was. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I carried the picture frame into the workshop. I placed it beside Richard's blue vise. Then I whispered something I had wanted to say for months. We're going to be okay. The wind moved softly through the open window. Some people would call that coincidence. I chose not to. The following spring, I received one final letter. Not from Richard, from David. His handwriting looked older somehow. Dear Mom, I've written this letter 100 times, thrown it away 100 times. Nothing I say can repair what I broke. I finally understand that forgiveness isn't something I ask for. It's something I spend the rest of my life trying to deserve. Every day in prison I hear Dad's voice. Not because I'm haunted, because he was right. I kept believing one more lie would solve the last one. It never did. If Noah ever asks about me, please don't tell him I'm a monster. Tell him I was a man who stopped telling the truth and lost everything because of it. Love, David. I folded the letter carefully, placed it beside Richard's. One written by the man who never stopped protecting us. One written by the man who finally understood why. That evening, I sat on the front porch as the sun disappeared behind the trees. The house was quiet, peaceful. Exactly the way Richard always loved it. I thought about everything that had happened. The whispered warning from Noah. The hidden workshop compartment. The blue vise. The silver key. The memory card. The recordings. The courtroom. The cedar chest. Every clue had pointed toward more than stolen money. They had pointed toward a simple truth. Love is not proven when life is easy. Love is proven by what we choose to protect when everything else falls apart. Richard protected me. I protected Noah. And now, it was Noah's turn to protect the future. If you've stayed with me until the end of this story, I hope you remember one thing. Never ignore the quiet voice that tells you something isn't right. And never believe that telling the truth destroys a family. Sometimes, it's the only thing that gives a family the chance to heal. Before you go, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were in my place, could you have forgiven David after everything he did? Please share your answer in the comments. I read every one of them, and your perspective might help someone facing a similar struggle. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next story. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of the people you love, tell them the truth while you still can, and I'll see you in the next story.